The core worlds of Andromeda shimmered like a living jewel belt, 3,000 species strong, 2 million years unbroken. Dyson swarms drank stars for breakfast, reality anchors held nebulae in polite suspension, and the conclave's grand assembly halls floated in perpetual daylight, their crystalline walls refracting light from 1,000 captured supernovae. In the prime conclave chamber, on the world called Etherian Prime, delegates from every major polity sat in their tiered rings. The insectile cravor clicked mandibles in low debate. The luminous silica matriarchs pulsed data streams across their translucent forms. The tentacled voidborn floated in nutrient clouds, arguing metaphysics with scent pheromones. At the center, the High Arbiter, a towering, multi-limbed being named Corvel, raised one of its primary limbs for silence. The agenda proceeds to tariff adjustments on the Perseus Arm Trade Corridor. Every light source died. Every hollow projector, neural feed, comm crystal, and public view screen across 30,000 light-years flickered to uniform black, then ignited with the same single image. A human face, middle-aged, clean-shaven, eyes the color of old steel under starlight. He wore a plain gray uniform, no medals, no epaulets, no ornate collar. Behind him stretched only soft darkness, as though he stood in an empty room lit by his own presence. He spoke in perfect trade speech, the synthesized lingua franca every civilized species had adopted eons ago. His voice carried no accent, no emotion, only calm certainty. "This is Admiral Elias Voss of the United Terran Expanse. We have arrived in your galaxy." A ripple passed through the chamber. Several delegates froze mid-gesture. A young Craver warrior's mandibles clacked once in disbelief. "Effective immediately," the human continued, "all conclave member states, protectorates, and unaffiliated systems will stand down military forces, dismantle hyperspatial exclusion fields, and prepare for integration inspections. Non-compliance will be met with corrective measures." He paused exactly 3 heartbeats, long enough for translators to confirm no hidden subtext, no coded threat layer. "Surrender or be obliterated. You have 7 standard cycles." The image vanished. Silence held for perhaps 2 seconds before the chamber erupted. "Impossible!" roared a silica matriarch, her crystalline lattice flashing red alarm patterns. "No vessel signature crossed the intergalactic void. The distance is 2.5 million light-years. Even at Planck limit acceleration, it would require—" "Quiet!" Corvel's voice boomed through override harmonics. The chamber light steadied. "Analysis, now!" Across Andromeda, the same questions cascaded through command nodes. Trace origin? Source vector points to the outer eastern spiral arm. Inside our space. Fleet signatures? None detected. No warp wakes, no tachyon blooms, no gravitic ripples. Identity? United Terran Expanse. Cross-reference yields 0 matches in 2 million years of records. Humans? Myth. A primitive bipedal species rumored extinct in their home galaxy millennia ago. No interstellar presence ever recorded, yet the broadcast had originated from within Andromeda. It had overridden every encryption lattice the Conclave possessed, simultaneously, effortlessly. In the outer monitoring stations, sensor technicians stared at clean scopes. No armada, no anomalous particles, just the usual background hum of a galaxy at peace. Then the first scout corvettes launched toward the signal coordinates. They never reported back. 7 cycles began ticking down. The Conclave did not panic easily. 2 million years of unchallenged supremacy had sanded away the rough edges of fear. When the first scout corvettes vanished without even a distress squeal, High Command treated it as sensor error or pirate ambush. Annoying but routine. When the second wave of destroyers disappeared the same way, they dispatched a full expeditionary fleet. 48 capital ships, led by the Eternal Harmony, flagship of the Silica Matriarchy. A kilometer-long crystalline leviathan studded with phase lance arrays and causality disruptor banks. Flanked by Cravor wedge carriers bristling with antimatter torpedoes, void-born shadow dreadnoughts that drank light itself, and a dozen auxiliary squadrons from lesser species eager to prove their worth. They translated into real space at the reported origin coordinates, a quiet stretch of the eastern spiral arm near the nebula called Vale's Edge. Empty, no debris fields, no anomalous radiation, just the usual cosmic background. Then the scopes found it. A single vessel, matte black, roughly the size of a heavy cruiser, yet shaped like nothing in 2 million years of records. No visible engines, no radiator fins, no weapon ports. It hung motionless against the star field, absorbing light rather than reflecting it. Thermal signature, 0. Electromagnetic emissions, 0. Gravitic footprint, 0. It simply was. Fleet Admiral Lyra Kesh of the Eternal Harmony pulsed a wideband hail in every known protocol layer. Unknown vessel, identify. You are in restricted conclave space. Power down and prepare for boarding. Silence. Then the same voice from the broadcast, Admiral Elias Voss, replied, calm and unhurried. You were warned. Lyra Kesh's lattice flared indignation. All batteries, causality lances, erase it from timeline continuity, fire. 48 ships spoke at once. Causality disruptor beams, violet-white spears that did not travel so much as unmake the space between firer and target, lanced across the void. Weapons that rewrote local history so the target had never occupied that point in spacetime. Perfect, unavoidable, final. The beams reached the black ship and stopped. Meters from the hull, the lances froze mid-flight, frozen threads of unraveling probability. Then slowly, gracefully, they began to fray. Colors bled backward. Violet became ultraviolet, became nothing. The beams collapsed into harmless quantum foam, dissipating like smoke in vacuum. The black ship had not moved, had not raised a shield, had not even twitched. Silence again. Then it moved. Not with acceleration, not with thrust. One instant it was there, the next it was elsewhere. 6 seconds. That was all it took. It crossed the entire formation. 48 capital ships spread across 30,000 kilometers. In the time it takes most species to blink twice. No exhaust plume, no warp signature, just absence where presence had been. Where it passed, ships ceased, not exploded, not disintegrated. Simply stopped being. One moment a Cravor wedge carrier was venting plasma from overloaded reactors. The next only an expanding sphere of exotic particles where hull, crew, and weapons had existed. No wreckage, no escape pods, no final screams over comms. Just perfect, surgical deletion. The Eternal Harmony lasted longest, perhaps 3 seconds longer than the rest. Its crystalline superstructure sang a desperate harmonic of overload as secondary systems tried to compensate for physics that no longer applied. Lyra Kesh watched from the command nexus as the black ship appeared directly ahead. No transit time, no approach vector. A single human figure materialized on the bridge, not teleported, not projected. Simply there, plain gray uniform, no helmet, no visible weapon. He looked at Lyra Kesh with those old steel eyes. Next time, he said quietly. Yes, listen. Then the flagship was gone too. One lone frigate, the Silent Echo, managed to jump to hyperspace before the wave reached it. Its captain transmitted a fragmented data burst back to Etherian Prime before self-destructing to prevent capture. The footage was grainy, compressed, horrifying. The black ship wasn't firing anything. It simply touched targets. A brush of its hull against another vessel's shield envelope, and the larger ship folded inward like origami made of light, then vanished. Not into another dimension, not into a black hole, just elsewhere, erased from the substrate. The analysts on Etherian Prime watched the loop again and again. No energy discharge, no exotic particles beyond background. The human vessel wasn't breaking physics. It was politely asking physics to step aside, and physics obeyed. In the Prime conclave chamber, Corvell stared at the final frame. The black ship alone amid expanding emptiness. Pristine, untouched. The galaxy's most ancient superpower had just lost its first fleet to a single intruder, and the 7-cycle clock still ticked. 4 cycles remained. Etherian Prime's war vaults opened for the first time in 1800 millennia. Deep beneath the planet's crust, in chambers sealed since the last galactic schism, the conclave's most forbidden arsenal awoke. Lights that had not burned since the species of the core first learned to speak, ignited in sequence. Cravor technicians, normally arrogant, mandibles always half raised in disdain, now moved with trembling precision. Silica matriarchs pulsed dim violet fear light across their lattices. Even the Voidborn, who claimed to feel no emotion, released pheromones thick with dread. They had names for these weapons only in the oldest archival dialects. Starbreaker Cascade. Black hole bombs seeded into galactic core accretion disks designed to chain react and swallow spiral arms. False vacuum triggers. Devices that would destabilize the Higgs field in targeted volumes, collapsing reality into a lower energy state and converting cubic light years into expanding bubbles of nothingness. Temporal recursion arrays. Lattice nets that looped small regions of space-time backward, forcing enemy formations to relive their final moments until entropy itself gave up. Most terrible of all was the Aegis Protocol, a network of 317 Dyson megastructures, each one a perfect shell around a main sequence star, had been constructed during the Elder Wars as a last resort doomsday firewall. When activated, they would seal entire stellar neighborhoods inside inverted causality envelopes. No energy could escape. No information could propagate outward. Stars would dim. Systems would freeze. Entire sectors would be starved of usable spacetime until the aggressor either withdrew or perished in the dark. The High Arbiter Quorvel authorized full activation without vote. Better a galaxy in chains than no galaxy at all, it intoned, voice stripped of its usual harmonic grandeur. Across Andromeda, the shells closed. Light died in orderly waves. Stars winked out like candles snuffed by an unseen hand. Trade routes vanished into sudden night. Billions of lesser species on rim worlds looked up in confusion as their skies turned black, then panicked as fusion reactors sputtered and failed under impossible entropy gradients. For 3 full cycles, the galaxy held its breath. No human ships appeared on any scope, no broadcasts, no black cruisers brushing reality aside, just silence and darkness spreading like spilled ink. In the prime chamber, hope flickered. A young Cravor staff officer dared speak it aloud. They have withdrawn. The intergalactic barbarians found our resolve too great. We have won. Quorvel did not answer. Its primary eyes remained fixed on the master holosphere, where the Aegis envelope now covered 32% of inhabited space and was expanding geometrically. Then the stars came back. Not gradually, not with warning flares or precursor particles. Every suppressed star reignited simultaneously, brighter, bluer, angrier. Coronae lashed out in mathematically perfect spirals. Coronal mass ejections sculpted into fractal mandalas that covered light hours. The Dyson shells cracked, not from internal overload, not from external bombardment. They cracked from the inside. Human boarding teams materialized on command decks without transit signatures. No wormholes, no phase shift, no detectable jump. Men and women in plain gray ship suits carrying nothing more threatening than small data slates. They walked among screaming engineers and security drones. They did not shoot. They did not shout. They simply Yeshai adjusted settings. A human would place one hand on a crystalline control node. Reality would shiver. The Aegis envelope's mathematics would rewrite itself mid-equation. On the inverted causality became ordinary expansion. Entropy gradients flattened. The stars burned normally again. The shells, once engines of galactic death, became inert monuments. Their inner surfaces etched with the same quiet message in 100 scripts. Please do not do that again. A new broadcast reached every remaining comm node. The same calm face, the same steel eyes. We disabled your kill switch because children shouldn't play with matches. Admiral Voss's voice held no mockery, only patient disappointment. Surrender or be obliterated. 4 cycles remain. The chamber fell silent. Across Andromeda, species that had once dismissed the Milky Way as a graveyard of primitives now whispered a new designation in every language: the locusts. Not because humans devoured worlds, not because they consumed biomass or resources, because after contact with them, entire branches of physics became deprecated. Causality lances unraveled at a touch. False vacuum decay refused to propagate. Temporal recursion loops straightened into boring linear time the moment a human glanced at the equations. They did not conquer with superior weapons. They conquered by making the weapons embarrassing. In the outer monitoring posts, surviving captains stared at clean scopes once more. The black ship from first contact had never reappeared. It hadn't needed to. Humanity had answered with something far worse than an armada. They had answered with correction, and the clock kept ticking. 3 cycles left. The stubborn refused to bend. Across the core worlds, surrender edicts arrived in waves. Some species quietly dissolved their fleets, yet others broadcast tearful capitulations in every dialect. But 3 polities stood apart, defiant to the marrow. The Cravor Dominion, whose warriors measured worth in mandibles broken on enemy hulls. The Silica Matriarchy, whose crystalline minds had never known retreat. The Void-born Collective, shadows that claimed the space between stars as birthright. Together they formed the last covenant. No diplomats, no negotiations. Only a single galaxy-wide transmission from the supermassive black hole at Andromeda's heart. Horus, the Devourer. A Cravor warlord named Kazath Vor appeared on every remaining view screen, mandibles wide in challenge, carapace gleaming under the accretion disk glare. "Come then, apes," he snarled. "We die free. Bring your black ships. Bring your corrections. We wait behind the event horizon itself. Touch us there, if you dare." The broadcast ended with the Covenant's remaining armadas arrayed in perfect formation. Thousands of capital vessels anchored to the ergosphere, weapon batteries trained outward, temporal anchors dug deep into the Singularity's frame. Horus itself became fortress and shield. Nothing escaped a black hole's grasp. Nothing crossed its boundary and returned. The galaxy watched. 3 cycles remained on the clock. Then humanity answered. No grand fleet materialized at the galactic core. No armada of black cruisers darkened the accretion disk. Instead, a single point of light appeared just outside the innermost stable orbit, small, steady, the color of pale dawn. It expanded, not into a ship, not into a portal of swirling exotic matter, into a doorway, a simple rectangular frame of soft white light, when standing upright against the roaring plasma storms of the disk. Through it stepped humans, plain environmental suits, gray, no armor plating, no visible weapons. Helmets retracted to reveal calm faces, breathing vacuum as though it were garden air. They actually walked across the naked event horizon. Impossible. Tidal forces should have shredded them. Hawking radiation should have cooked them. The point of no return should have been absolute. Yet they moved forward with the casual stride of tourists crossing a plaza. Gravity bent around them like polite deference. Light red-shifted, then blue-shifted again as they passed the photon sphere. They reached the battle stations. Covenant commanders screamed orders. Every weapon spoke at once. Antimatter lances, graviton shears, chronal disruptors, void cannons that tore holes in the brain itself. The barrage struck. Nothing. The humans were already inside. No breach alarms, no hull ruptures, no teleport signatures. They simply appeared on every command deck simultaneously. Dozens, hundreds, thousands of them, standing quietly amid panicked crews. A human would approach a Cravor gunnery officer frozen at his station, place one gloved hand on the console. Reality would hiccup. The weapon banks would go dark, not destroyed, not slagged, simply deactivated. Power conduits became inert ceramic. Firing coils turned to perfect, useless sculptures of glass. Drives vanished from engineering readouts as though they had never been installed. On the Silica flagship Prism Eternal, a matriarch pulsed desperate override harmonics. A human woman in gray stepped forward, smiled gently, and touched the central lattice node. The matriarch's entire mind, every crystalline facet, every petabyte of tactical genius, froze mid-thought. Not damaged, not erased, merely paused, like a program encountering an unexpected divide by zero. Across the fleet, the same pattern repeated. Life support systems began polite countdowns in trade speech. Evacuation recommended. Structural integrity will terminate in T-minus 60 seconds. Bulkheads sealed with soft clicks. Escape pods launched themselves empty. before the ships themselves went quiescent. One transmission escaped before the last comm array fell silent. Kazaath Vor, alone on his flagship's ruined bridge, mandibles trembling for the first time in his long life. "What are you?" The reply came not from a view screen, but from the air itself. Admiral Elias Voss's voice, gentle, almost paternal. "Humans, we waited 2 million years to knock on your door. You really shouldn't have shot first." The core went dark, not extinguished, not consumed, merely still. Every Covenant vessel powered down. Every weapon became decoration. Every warrior found themselves alive, unharmed, drifting in suddenly silent hulls. The doorway of light remained open a moment longer. Through it, the humans walked back the way they had come, unhurried, untouched. Then it closed. The event horizon of Horus returned to its normal, merciless mathematics. 2 cycles left. The galaxy understood at last. Humanity had not come to conquer. They had come to lecture, and they had just given the final exam. The 7th cycle ended at the exact instant predicted. No second early, no second late. Across Andromeda, the surrender streams began. They did not arrive as formal delegations in gilded vessels or triumphant fleets of capitulation. They came quietly, almost apologetically. Data packets transmitted from every remaining command node. Every planetary capital, every orbital habitat still capable of coherent thought. Empire after empire, species after species, dissolved their militaries with the same weary finality of a parent putting away dangerous toys. The Kravor Dominion broadcast a single image. Their ancient war blades laid in neat rows on the obsidian floor of the Great Hive, edges turned inward. The Silica Matriarchy sent crystalline memory shards containing every tactical lattice they had ever spun. Now permanently locked in red-only mode. The Voidborn Collective released a pheromone cloud that carried one word. It repeated in olfactory script across 1,000 systems. Enough. No riots. No last stands. The galaxy had seen what happened when defiance met correction. In the Prime Conclave chamber on Etherian Prime, now dim, its supernova prisms shuddered, a single holographic envoy materialized at the center dais. No fanfare. No escort. Just a human in the same plain gray uniform, projected at life size. He looked exactly like Admiral Elias Voss, though whether this was the same individual or merely a convenient avatar, no one dared ask. He spoke without preamble. The terms are as follows: there will be no tribute. There will be no occupation forces. There will be no forced relocation or cultural erasure. Only 3 requirements. 1. On all reality-altering weaponry, defined as any device capable of modifying the substrate constants of local spacetime, must be forfeit. They are already non-functional. Consider this a formality. 2. The United Terran Expanse assumes stewardship of all intergalactic transit lanes and dimensional shear points connecting Andromeda to the local group. Travel will remain open, but under unified traffic control. 3. Every signatory species will dispatch at least 1 permanent representative to Earth for cultural exchange and joint planning. Transportation will be provided. He paused, letting the simplicity of it settle. That is all. Corvel, High Arbiter, no longer entitled but still present by sheer inertia, raised a trembling primary limb. Why? The word carried no harmonic overlay, just raw curiosity laced with exhaustion. Why spare us? You could have unmade the galaxy as easily as you unmade our fleets. Voss's avatar regarded the ancient being with something almost like fondness. Because 4 billion years from now, Andromeda and the Milky Way will collide. Not metaphorically, literally. Spiral arms will tangle. Stars will pass within light months of each other. Gravitational chaos will shred trillions of habitats unless someone knows how to thread the galaxies together without losing a single sun. He gestured at the empty chamber. We already lost one home. We spent 2 million years rebuilding in the dark between galaxies, learning the deep rules so we could come back and say, not again, not here, not to anyone else. Silence followed, then softly, you are being recruited, not conquered, recruited. Because the job is too big for one species alone. The hologram flickered once. Representatives will be collected in 30 cycles. We look forward to meeting you properly." The projection vanished. Months later, after the first shuttles had ferried stunned delegates across the intergalactic void, a young Andromedan diplomat from a minor rim species named Lear stood on the observation deck of the new galactic forum on Earth. Below stretched the blue-green curve of a world that had once been written off as extinct. Above, scaffolding already spiderwebbed across local space, kilometer-long frameworks of unobtrusive material, the first bones of a merger guide lattice meant to steer two galaxies through their billion-year dance. Lear turned to the simple plaque mounted on the railing, etched in trade speech in a dozen native scripts. "We came. And we saw. We decided you were worth saving. Humanity." A human guide, young, smiling, wearing the same unadorned gray, approached. "First time seeing a merger scaffold?" she asked. Lear nodded, still staring at the plaque. "It is beautiful, terrifying, but beautiful." The human laughed softly. "That's the job description." Far beyond the forum's dome, the first joint engineering crews, human and Andromedan, began threading the initial anchor strands. Stars did not scream, nebulae did not boil. Reality simply adjusted, politely, under hands that had learned to ask rather than demand. Surrender had not been defeat, it had been an invitation. Humanity had just adopted an entire galaxy, and whether the locals liked it or not, they were going to fix it together. 400 standard years passed in the blink of galactic time. The merger scaffolding now spanned light years, delicate threads of stabilized exotic matter, weaving between the approaching spiral arms of Andromeda and the Milky Way. Stars no longer drifted on blind gravitational whim. They followed gentle tugs from anchor points that humans and their new allies had learned to place with surgical care. Nebulae that once would have boiled into violent starbirth regions now flowed like rivers guided by invisible banks. The collision, once forecast as cataclysm, had become choreography. Earth's sky, once a lonely blue dome, now glittered with permanent aurorae of transit gates. Ships of every shape crossed daily, sleek human arcs still wearing their ancient cryopod scars, crystalline silica barges pulsing with shared data light, Cravor troop carriers repurposed as mobile academies, void-born shadow vessels that carried nothing but questions. In the Galactic Forum's central atrium, a vast open sphere carved from a hollowed-out moon, delegates gathered for the annual review. No more hierarchies of seating. Species sat, or floated, or coiled, or phased, in concentric rings that shifted according to who had contributed most meaningfully to the current phase of the merger project. Today, the innermost ring belonged to a mixed human Cravor engineering cadre. Admiral Elias Voss, still looking no older than the day of the broadcast, though everyone now understood why, stood at the center podium. Gray uniform unchanged, steel eyes unchanged. Only the faintest smile betrayed 4 centuries of quiet satisfaction. A young silica delegate named Vex Lar rose first, lattice shimmering with restrained excitement. Feed projections for the next millennium show 99.98% stellar survival rate. Only 7 systems require final relocation. We have never been closer to zero-loss merger. Applause in a dozen modalities rippled outward. Clicking mandibles, harmonic chimes, pheromone bursts, silent neural pings. Voss inclined his head. Then it is time to speak of what comes after. The atrium quieted. He gestured. The sphere's inner surface became a living star map. Not just Andromeda and the Milky Way, but the entire local group. Triangulum, dozens of dwarf galaxies, the approaching Mafi clouds and far beyond, the faint smudge of the Virgo supercluster. We fixed our neighborhood, Voss said simply. Next neighborhood over is messier. Gravitational anarchy. Rogue black holes stripping galaxies bare. Quasars chewing through star fields like children with too much sugar. And somewhere out there, maybe 30 million light-years coreward, something older than both our galaxies combined is waking up. He let the map zoom, a region of space that looked wrong. Light bent in unnatural helices, entire galaxy clusters redshifted into near invisibility, as though trying to hide. We call it the anchor. We don't know who or what placed it there. We only know it's been pulling strings for longer than stars have been burning hydrogen, and it's noticed us. A low rumble passed through the Cravor contingent. Instinctive challenge. Vexlar's lattice dimmed thoughtfully. You mean to correct it? The silica asked. Voss's smile grew fractionally wider. No, we mean to invite it. Same way we invited you. He turned to face the full assembly. 4 centuries ago, you surrendered to a handful of tired refugees who had already burned one galaxy and refused to let another burn. You learned from us. You taught us patience we had forgotten. Together, we saved 2 galaxies from each other. The map shifted again, now showing projected transit routes snaking outward from the local group like roots seeking new soil. The united Terran expanse is no longer just human. It never really was after the broadcast. It's us, all of us, and the next broadcast won't be a threat. He raised one hand. A new message template appeared in the air, written in trade speech and every native script represented in the room. This is the combined expanse of the local group. We have arrived in your supercluster. We come to share what we have learned about not destroying ourselves. Stand with us or stand aside. The anchor is waking. Help us wake it gently. Silence held. Longer this time. Deeper. Then Kazath Vor, the same Cravor warlord who had once dared humanity to touch Horus, rose from his place in the outer ring. Age had silvered his carapace, but the mandibles still carried steel. He clicked once, sharply. When do we leave? Voss looked at him, really looked, and for the first time in centuries, the Admiral laughed. Soft, genuine. Tomorrow, he said. The arcs are already warming their drives. Outside the forum, scaffolding lights flared brighter as new strands extended toward the edge of known space. Ships began to gather, not in battle formation, but in the patient lines of a people who had learned that the hardest wars were won before the first shot. Humanity had not come to conquer Andromeda. They had come to grow up. And now they were taking the galaxy with them, because some lessons are too important to learn alone. The broadcast had ended 400 years ago. A new one was about to begin. The combined Expanse fleet emerged from the final transit shear point like ghosts stepping out of fog. 30 million light-years from the local group's edge, in a region of space the old star charts had marked only as anomalous void, the anchor waited. It was not a structure. It was not a machine. It was absence made deliberate. A spherical volume roughly the diameter of a small galaxy, empty of stars, empty of gas, empty of light, had been carved from the cosmic web. Around its perfect boundary, the fabric of space-time itself folded inward in recursive patterns, like a napkin tucked under a plate so the tablecloth never wrinkles. Light that should have crossed the void bent away at impossible angles. Time dilation gradients rippled outward in slow, patient waves. Entropy here did not increase. It politely declined to comment. The fleet, now numbering in the tens of thousands, hulls from every species of the old conclave and every arc humanity had ever launched, formed a loose hemispherical shell a light month out. No weapons powered up, no targeting locks, only sensor beams, soft and questioning. Admiral Elias Voss stood on the observation deck of the flagship Eternal Dawn, the first true joint construction vessel, its spine laid by Cravor welders, its mind woven by silica lattices, its heart a human fusion core that sang lullabies to dark matter. Around him gathered the council, Kazath Vor, mandibles silvered with age, Vexlar, Willatus now permanently flecked with human gold inlays, Lear, the young diplomat who had once stared at Earth's merger plaque in awe. They watched the void. A single pulse emanated from the anchor. Not sound, not light, not gravity. A recognition. Then it spoke. Not in trade speech, not in any language. It spoke in mathematics. The substrate constants themselves rearranged into coherent patterns that every mind present understood simultaneously. The way a child suddenly comprehends that 2 + 2 has always been 4. You have come far, the anchor said, further than the others. Voss stepped forward, though there was no forward to step to. We had help, he replied, aloud in plain voice. knowing it would be translated at the level of reality itself. A galaxy's worth, and before that, another galaxy's mistakes. A long pause. West the void rippled once, contemplatively. You corrected your cradle, you corrected your neighbor. Now you seek the cradle of cradles. Images flickered across every view screen, every neural feed, every mind. Fossil galaxies older than the cosmic microwave background, their stars arranged in deliberate mandalas. Black hole orchards tended like gardens, feeding not on matter but on wasted probability. Civilizations that had learned to unmake time itself, then chosen, with perfect calm, to never use the knowledge. And at the center of it all, the anchor. Not a relic, not a weapon, but a question asked in 4 dimensions. Why do you wake me? Voss did not hesitate. Because the universe is still learning how not to die young. Because every galaxy that burns out alone is a tragedy we can prevent. Because we looked at Andromeda and saw not a threat, but family we hadn't met yet. And because we think you might be lonely. The void considered this. Then, slowly with the patience of something that had waited since the Planck epoch, the anchor unfolded. Not violently, not with light or sound. It simply remembered that it could have edges. A single thread of space-time extended outward, tentative, like a hand offered across a table. It touched the eternal dawn's bow. Reality did not break. It breathed. New equations bloomed inside every ship's databanks. Blueprints for stabilizing false vacuum pockets across superclusters. Maps of dormant merger points between entire galactic filaments. Lullabies to soothe rogue quasars back to sleep. And one final message, soft as dawn, I was never asleep. I was waiting for someone brave enough to ask politely. The thread withdrew. The anchor did not vanish. It simply became part of the map. A new node on the growing web of the combined expanse. No longer hidden, no longer alone. Kazath Vor clicked his mandibles once. Respect, not challenge. Vexlar's lattice sang a quiet ascending chord. Lear whispered, "We didn't conquer it." Voss turned from the viewport, eyes on the council. "No," he said, "we invited it to dinner." Behind them, the fleet adjusted course, not toward conquest but toward the next unmarked void on the charts. The broadcast had begun as a warning. It had become an invitation. Now it was simply conversation. And the universe, old, vast, and suddenly less lonely, was finally ready to talk back. 1 billion years slipped past like breath on glass. The local group had long since become something unrecognizable. Not a collection of galaxies, but a single. Living filament, stars threaded on gravitational strings, black holes choreographed into slow ballets, dark matter sculpted into avenues wide enough for civilizations to stroll between clusters. The merger of Andromeda and the Milky Way had been only the overture. What followed was symphony on cosmic scales. The combined expanse no longer spoke of humanity, or conclave, or even the old species. Those labels had dissolved generations ago, the way salt disappears into water. What remained was a tapestry of minds, some carbon-based, some lattice-born, some pure pattern living in folded space-time, some beings who had chosen to become echoes of earlier selves so they could remember what fear once felt like. At the heart of it all floated the anchor, no longer a void but a luminous library. Its interior had unfolded into nested continua, rooms the size of superclusters where one could walk, or phase, or think through preserved timelines of every civilization that had ever asked the right question. Visitors came to listen to the first song sung by plasma clouds, to watch galaxies being born and fast forward, to sit in silence beside species that had chosen extinction rather than stagnation. Admiral Elias Voss, no longer admiral, no longer even corporeal in the strictest sense, existed now as a distributed presence. A quiet thread of awareness that wandered the anchor's halls, occasionally condensing into a familiar gray uniform figure when someone needed to see a face they could recognize. One such day, measured in epochs, a very young mind approached him. It was not from any single species. It was a composite, the curiosity of a newly emergent post-biological hive from a dwarf galaxy on the Virgo fringe, the patience of an ancient Cravor philosopher who had outlived his own chitin. The wonder of a human child line whose ancestors had once cried at the broadcast on Etherian Prime. The composite mind took the form of shifting light, polite and hesitant. We have a question the anchor will not answer directly. Voss's avatar smiled the same small, patient smile. Ask, why did you threaten obliteration? You could have simply arrived, shared knowledge, invited without ultimatum. Yet the first words across Andromeda were, surrender or be obliterated. Why begin with terror? The anchor's light dimmed slightly, as though listening harder. Voss looked out across a preserved view window. The exact moment, replayed in perfect fidelity, when the black cruiser had first brushed a conclave battle group and made warships remember they were temporary. Because terror is honest, he said quietly. The composite flickered, confused. Honest. Any sufficiently advanced species can appear benevolent, offer gifts, whisper promises. History, our history, your histories, is littered with smiling predators who arrived with open hands and left with empty graves. We knew what we looked like, refugees from a ruined galaxy, wielding powers that rewrote reality like casual notes in the margin. If we had come gently, smiling, you would have smiled back and waited for the knife. He gestured at the frozen image of the eternal harmony dissolving into probability smoke. We showed you the knife first, not to wound, but to prove we weren't hiding one. Once you saw what we could do and chose not to, you could believe what we would do. Invitation after demonstration is trust. Invitation before demonstration is salesmanship. The light mind pulsed thoughtfully. And if we had fought to the last? Voss's eyes, still that old steel, softened. Then we would have saved you from yourselves the hard way. But we never wanted ashes. We wanted partners. The threat was the loudest way we knew to say, please don't make us demonstrate this twice. Silence stretched across subjective centuries. Then the composite spoke again, softer now. Did it hurt to become the monster in someone else's sky? Voss looked away, toward the endless shelves of preserved moments. Every day for the first 1,000,000 years. Then we remembered why we crossed the void in the first place. Not to rule, not to punish, in order to make sure no one else had to watch their home burn because nobody knew how to steer galaxies. He turned back. And you? Do you regret answering the broadcast? The light mind brightened, laughter in fractal patterns. Regret? No. We regret only that it took 2,000,000 years for someone to knock so loudly. Voss laughed then, genuine, warm, the sound echoing through nested continua. Somewhere deeper in the anchor, preserved forever, the original broadcast replayed on loop for anyone who wished to remember, surrender or be obliterated. You have 7 standard cycles. No one feared it anymore. It had become the oldest joke in the cosmos. The punchline? Everyone lived. And the next broadcast, whenever it came, would begin the same gentle way the anchor now spoke. You have come far, further than the others. Come in. We've been waiting.